there. All right.
You meant now?
What was that?
You meant now?
Yes, I meant now. Greetings, everyone. It's wonderful to have you. We are going to have some fun tonight in perhaps what might be the one of the harder passages in the Bible to understand and certainly to apply. So I think Thessalonians is probably harder. Maybe chapter 17 of Revelation might be harder. There's some other little passages here and there, but this one's messy. But I think we're going to be able to see something pretty beautiful in it. Evil and beautiful at the same time. So let's start with prayer. Thank you, Jesus, for your work on the cross. Thank you, Father, for the Lamb and this alternative way for us to do life, this suffering and sacrifice. I pray that today we might see that as beautiful and not as so crazy. Use this community as we're together to challenge one another and to hold each other accountable and to together see Jesus. And we will praise you for all the successes we have in our hermeneutics and in our life. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right. So let's jump back for a second to chapter 12. If you remember, we did chapter 12 this Christmas, so we've forgotten a lot of that, I'm sure. It's been a full 2.5 months probably. And then we went back and finished chapter 9, 10, and 11 since then. And now we're going to get ready to go into chapter 13. But I thought it's been long enough and we can't remember. Let's read. And reading is always a good thing, I think. So let's just follow what's going on. Does anybody want to read Revelation chapter 12 to us in their best storytelling voice? It's a beautiful story. So you can't make this boring. There's no monotony here. Now no one's going to raise their hand, right? Now that I've set it up that way.
I can read it, but I have a scratchy old lady voice.
Oh, the scratchy old lady part is just fine, although I think your voice is fantastic. But you got to just give us some,
A
story.
great portent appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pangs in the agony of giving birth. Then another portent appeared in heaven, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his heads. His tail swept down 1/3 of the stars from heaven and threw them to the earth. Then the dragon stood before the woman who was about to bear a child so that he might devour her child as soon as it was born. And she gave birth to a son, a male child, who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was snatched away and taken to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared by God so that there she can be nourished for 1,260 days. The war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. The dragon and his angels fought back, but they were defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. The great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven proclaiming, "Now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our comrades has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. But they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they did not cling to life, even in the face of death. Rejoice then, you heavens, and all who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you with great wrath, because he knows that his time is short." So when the dragon saw that he'd been thrown down to the earth, He pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child, but the woman was given the 2 wings of the great eagle so that she could fly from the serpent into the wilderness to her place where she is nourished for a while and times and half a time. Then from his mouth, the serpent poured water like a river after the woman to sweep her away with a flood. And the earth came to help of the woman. It opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from his mouth. And then the dragon was angry with the woman, and he went off to make war on the rest of her children, those who keep the commandments of God and hold the testimony of Jesus. Then the dragon took his stand on the sand of the seashore.
Okay. All right. So a quick reminder of what that was. If you remember, what we have is this. Well, we got 3 main characters, right? The woman, the dragon, and the child. Okay. There's also some eagles. There's other stars that have been swept out of heaven. There's other things. And apparently this dragon is now at the end standing on the seashore calling for something. Okay. Which we're about to find out. So the dragon is pretty clearly Satan, right? The devil, the serpent of old. Okay. And remember the way we're supposed to understand Satan when we look at the book of Revelation. Stop thinking about either a serpent in the garden, stop thinking about some personal evil, and start thinking about that force in the world that is anti-God, that is seeking to take you in a direction that God doesn't want you to go. So in the sense that Jesus even says to Peter, right, get thee behind me, Satan, because Peter is suggesting, hey, let's go a different direction to success. And he's like, no, that's not the way we go. So any forces that direct our attention away from the way God has called us to live, which is what the whole book is about, right? Is an alternative way of living, a lamb way of living, not a lion way of living, not an overpower, but an underpower, a submission, a sacrifice, a death kind of power. It comes with that. So that's the whole story is trying to get to, is getting you to say no to the forces that are out there and that make you think this is the way life should be. Okay, that's what's going on. So here comes the serpent or the dragon, the Leviathan, the 700 monster that's all throughout mythology, this creature that comes, and he is going to try to kill this child. And of course, Mary has this child, or the woman has the child. Child is born. The child is caught up to God, right? Crucified, resurrected. The dragon thought he got him, didn't get him. And now the dragon is ticked. And so he attacks the woman again. The woman shifts in some sense, right? She is the people of God, Israel, Mary, the people of God in the New Testament. She's this whole picture here. And so he attacks the people of God post-resurrection, which is the people who are reading this book right now. Or then, sorry, people reading that book. That's who they're after. That's who the dragon is after. All right, that's the storyline. And there's this battle. Okay, and you're going to read all about the battle. In fact, you just did read about the battle in chapter 11. There were 2 witnesses, remember? Right? And they've been killed. And then they resurrect again. And the 2 witnesses are Elijah and Moses, or the people, the prophets of God, the true prophets. What we're going to get into, so we got the true prophets here that are killed. We got the dragon story, chapter 12. So 11, chapter 12. Do I have to do it the other way? 11, chapter 12. And then chapter 13, we're going to see this empire that rises up to destroy these 2 witnesses. Okay, so there's this constant retelling of the story. All right, so we've got the dragon, and the dragon is standing on the shore of chapter 12, right? Let's see here. Where is it? And the dragon stood on the shore of the sea, which is verse 1, which is kind of the end of that earlier passage. And now we're getting into this new section. So before we get into this new section, which I know none of you know anything about, you didn't read ahead, That's not who you are. I'm quite sure you know exactly what this passage is about. And here it is. I'm gonna. Okay, this is the Antichrist.
Dun, dun, dun.
There you go. Yeah, we
Whoa,
definitely.
whoa. Where is Antichrist in here?
Excellent. All right, Steve's already got it. There is
I don't read the word in here.
there's no mention of the word Antichrist in the book of Revelation.
What?
Right? All the stuff that we think about the Antichrist, not there. And here I am telling you, this is about the Antichrist. This is how interpreters do things, right? We've just so put this onto this text and not even stopped to say, is there an Antichrist even here to begin with? Because we have all these pictures of what the Antichrist is. Antichrist shows up in other passages, most predominantly John. Okay, and there is not one Antichrist, there are many Antichrists. Because that's anything that opposes the will of God, that calls you to go a different direction than God is calling you to go. And
The
you
opposite.
fight against the Antichrist every day. Go ahead, Steve.
No, Antichrist would be the opposite of Christ, right?
That's right. Yep. In fact, this whole chapter 13, is going to create this picture of a trinity, an unholy trinity, that is with the dragon, the beast, and the other beast, or the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. That's what we're going to talk about here. Okay, so when we start thinking about the Antichrist, what are the things that you start to think of immediately? What are
Well,
those?
it sounds like you used the same definition for Satan and Antichrist tonight. Did I hear that right? Things
Yes.
that take you away from
Absolutely.
God. Okay.
Yeah, so the beasts are simply trying to, so the one beast is trying to get us to worship the other beast. The other beast is trying to focus our attention on the dragon. They're a trinity.
Now, the dragon is Satan,
Right.
but Satan controls the beast.
That's right. Or authorizes, gives authority to the beast. Yep. Controls, maybe. That's fine. I don't like to use the word controls
Well,
because
you're right. It gives authority. It's better to say, it says here, great authority. You're right.
so I don't like to think of the dragon or Satan as if he possesses someone and controls them to do something.
He gives him
It's
great
simply
authority.
the evil power in the world that is often or always distracting our attention from what God's plan is for us.
Right.
Okay, which means a lot more things are Satan than we think are.
Yeah.
Right? In fact, maybe even decent things sometimes could be called Antichrist. Okay, because sometimes, yes, our phone, for instance, which can be used to do amazingly good things, but also be destructive.
So you've used the phrases interchangeably a couple times now. So would you say that they are totally interchangeable?
No, I mean,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
I want to go with the way the story tells us, right?
Right.
So we have a dragon, then we have an Antichrist, if you need this to be there, but I'm going to show you that it's not, and don't worry about it, right? And then we have another beast. Okay.
I thought
I'm
the
gonna
second
say-
one was the Antichrist.
Yes, there is dragon, Antichrist, beast. No. Well,
It's Beast and Antichrist.
yeah, so no, I think Antichrist is the first one, not the second beast. But here's the problem with trying to do such things is that we're taking this false system, right? This dispensational system, and we're trying to figure out where it fits, even though it doesn't say anything about that. So what I want us to do is move away from using the word Antichrist altogether and just use the biblical terminology. Okay, but I also want to bring it up because I want you to know that this is an issue in theological studies. All right, and so what you're going to immediately, so let's go back to what it is. We'll let's deal with this, but let's deal with it when we get to the text. Right now, I just want to play. What comes to mind when you hear the word Antichrist? What are you thinking?
Nikolai Carpathia in the Left Behind series.
All right, Nikolai Carpathian. For those of you who have read Tim LaHaye, right? Okay.
I definitely-
Jenkins. Yeah.
I definitely think of a person.
Okay.
I don't know.
Person.
I don't know why, but like when I think of it, I think of instead of Jesus, another person who is against Jesus or the opposite of Jesus.
The opposite of Jesus. Yep. Sits on a demonic throne, just like Jesus sits
Yeah.
on a heavenly one or something like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Growing up in the 60s and 70s, it was like Soviet Union.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. So
Yeah.
not just a person, but a whole state, like a nation.
Yeah,
the
and
bad
you could even
guys.
you could
Soviet
even get to
Union.
communist systems, Hitler, you know, things like that. Charismatic leaders to terrible ends.
Good. Yeah. And once you moved out of the 70s and you got into the 2000s, now we're talking about a whole different group of people. Like Soviets are no longer the bad guys, right? So we have to get a new group of bad guys. So of course it's the Arabs that are creating havoc and, you know, wherever they're at, Afghanistan, the war of the Middle East is the beginning of the empire of Satan. So many books were written on this. John Wolford had a book called Oil, Middle East, and the End Times Crisis or something like that. Right. So it's all about those things. Yeah.
Like I've always heard the person described as like Steve, you said this, I think, charismatic and like a deceiver, like everyone follows him and then you find out too late that he's not Christ. Like he tries to be Christ, or he makes everyone think he's Christ and then he's not. Like, I don't know where those narratives came from now. Maybe it's John. Maybe we'll find out, but yeah.
Case a few pages back in 1 John 4, he says, every spirit that acknowledges Christ has come in the flesh is from God, but every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard is coming.
Yep.
So
Antichrist. Every spirit. Yeah.
So
where was that, Brad?
That's 1 John 4:3.
1 John 4:3.
Which when it was written is not a few pages back. It's a
Right.
it's a whole separate scroll or letter.
True, but it's still John telling us about a spirit of Antichrist.
Right.
If it is the
More than
same
likely
John,
the same
right?
author. More than likely, same author.
Okay.
Scholars disagree on that, but yeah. I'm going to go ahead and I think the literature is close enough. If it's not the same author, it's somebody copying him. So it seems in the Greek to be pretty close. All right. Of course, do anybody associate any numbers with the Antichrist?
666.
666.
666.
16.
Yes. So in our 616, that's right. 616, that's right. Yep. So there's all, remember, we've already talked about like Apache helicopters that are coming. And anytime that you've grown up in the last 50 years, it doesn't matter. You've had some decade where the central idea of whatever the Antichrist is bringing, that 666, when barcodes started coming out, right? We were all afraid of the barcode, and we were afraid the barcode was going to be put on our hand or our forehead or something like that. Like Visa, right? So you got the V and the I, the S.
I heard the
That sounds
vaccination is how we got it.
I was just about to go there, Travis. I was gonna
The
say
vaccination is how we got the mark, right? Wasn't
Yeah.
that the thing?
Yep, I was gonna go there next, but yeah, sure, whatever. I mean, you don't let me play on anything, right? This is Zeta, like a Z sound, and
So,
then
so Joe
A.
Biden's the Antichrist, right?
What?
So Joe Biden's the Antichrist or Trump? Which one? I forget.
Why do I even bother to try?
Both.
You guys have
Yep.
something on your mind.
It
Go ahead,
was
Travis.
all-
You talk.
Travis, it was Obama.
Sorry, we gotta get it out of our system and then we'll let you talk.
I know, I
See,
don't
the
care.
Holy Trinity. You just brought it up, Kathy.
So, Jace, are you saying I should have an American Express card?
Yes, you can't have a Visa card because that's 666. It's right there in the Visa. Yes, Obama or Ronald Wilson Reagan all have six letters. Ronald
letters.
Wilson Reagan,
Oh, yeah.
666. Yeah. Have you seen this one? Those of you who grew up on Barney the dinosaur,
Uh-oh.
the cute purple dinosaur. I can't write, sorry. It's so painful. Dinosaur, and you start taking the letters out of here, any of the Roman. The U is a V, and let's see, a V that's here. And where else? Here's an L and a D and an I and a U again.
Wait.
If you take all of those together, you can come up with, right, the biggest one is L and C, and that's 600. And then you got the D for let's see, 600.
50. Oh,
Yeah, so you get
D and-
666.
And the I, yeah, and
Okay, some people have too much time on their hands.
60,
No, it's so
and then the
obvious.
B and the I, and there's 6. Yeah, right. Okay, so even Barney is the dinosaur. Okay, I just need to
God
sorry,
bless
like Travis, I had
Reddit.
to get that out.
yes.
Even the most casual observer recognized that.
Of course. Yeah.
Clear.
We all know Barney was the
Clearly.
Christ, regardless of whether cute purple dinosaur does it. All right.
Okay,
So
I'll
this-
stay quiet now.
you'll what?
I said I'll stay quiet now.
No, now you can talk. Now I'm done with my little spiel, so go ahead. Now you can put in whatever you want. In fact, we need to talk about you doing chapter 14 or 15, by the way. So actually, let's make you do 17. That'll be much easier for me once we get there. All right, so here we are. Whatever this dragon thing is, these pictures of dragon, serpent, okay, 7 head, this weird thing, this creature, is now standing on the shore. And I saw a beast coming out of the sea. He had 10 horns and 7 heads, and with 10 crowns on his horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. And the beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear, and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound has been healed. The whole world was astonished and followed the beast. Men worshipped the dragon because he'd given authority to the beast, and they also worshipped the beast and asked, who's like the beast? Who can make war against him? The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise his authority for 42 months. You've heard that before. He opened his mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. He was given power to make war against the saints and to conquer them, and he was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All the inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the book of life, belonging to the Lamb that was slain from the creation of the world. He who has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is going into captivity, into captivity he will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword he shall be killed. This calls for the patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of the saints. All right, so we have the big picture. That's the first beast. We got a second beast. We're definitely not getting to the second beast today. That's not going to happen. Okay, because there's enough application. Even if I just tell you what I think this means in 1 minute, we could spend the next 45 minutes just talking about the application of such a thing. But let's go a little bit slower. We got this dragon and these 2 things. They make up an unholy trinity. I've already kind of talked about that. And the beast comes up out of the sea, and you know what beast's coming out of the sea. What does the sea represent? Usually?
Chaos.
Chaos,
Yeah.
right? It's the tohu vabohu, the formlessness and void. It's the mess. And we're going to find out later the sea is destroyed, right? There is no more sea. But right now there's a sea. And out of the sea comes this chaos monster. And we've already seen him. He's going to be coming later up out of the abyss. Both places, sea, abyss, same thing. They're coming up. It's coming out of the evil. Don't think of this as a real beast. You're like, what kind of a beast is this? Is this a cow? Is this a dragon? What? Just, it's a picture. It doesn't make any difference. Okay, that's not the key. That's not the point here. It's a modern day political picture. So if I were to say the donkey and the elephant were fighting, what would you say? Like, nobody would be like, okay, what is the donkey big? Because the donkey's not going to win against the elephant. The elephant's huge, right? You know what happens when I talk about donkeys and elephants, right? In our world. In 1,000 years, they're not going to have a clue what this is unless they're reading all of these books. But right now, those are symbols of 2 political parties in the United States. Okay, if you go into another country even, they're not going to have quite as much a clue because they've got their own stuff going on, their own cartoons. Okay, so this is a cartoon picture of what this is. So both of these beasts, by the way, show up in what book in the Old Testament? Any ideas? There are two beasts in the Old Testament.
I'm just gonna say Daniel.
Daniel's a great, yes, the answer is yes. So good, David. Yeah, I mean, all of these animals, right? This picture of a bear, a lion, an eagle, wings and things like that, leopard, like that's all going to show up in Daniel. But there's a picture of these two beasts, one called Leviathan and one called Behemoth.
Job.
In the book of Job, exactly. Right. Good. Right. So the idea is out there in mythology. Okay, this ancient idea that God will beat up on these dragon type creatures. Okay, he's gonna bring an end to them. So they have 7 heads, and by the way, Leviathan, Tiamat in the ancient Near East, these dragon creatures have 7 heads. Pretty normal. You've even seen it in some of the like Percy Jackson myths, if you guys like Percy Jackson, or Perseus, if you want to go to the original Greek myths. There's 7-headed dragons that come in. And we see the connection there with chapter 12, that particular dragon. It's the number of completion. 7 has all the heads, all the power. We're going to deal with it a lot more when we get to chapter 17. That's why I said it's really difficult. And horns are symbols of power, right? Ram's horns. So there's a lot of horns here, claiming this brute force of this creature, the ultimate enemy of the church, of the believing people of God. So I think, what do you think this is?
The 10 horns, are those the 10 tribes too?
I don't think so. I don't think they're connected to the tribes. I think it's just a complete awesome power that they have. Because 12 tribes is what we've been talking about. 10, of course, in the north, but
Yeah.
yeah, and these aren't the good guys. These are the bad guys.
10 is just a number for completion, like 7, because it's 7 plus 3.
That's right. Yeah. The totality number. So most scholars would say that this beast represents political nation state. Like, okay, I'd use a different word. I would use empire to try to get the understanding across. Because it might be the nations, that is the bad nations. In their case, they're speaking of very specific bad nation, which is who?
So Rome.
Rome. Good job. Go ahead, Travis.
So it's like, I'm trying to think like what these would have, like images would have been for like the nations back in the day when this was written. So like the leopard, I feel like I've seen movies where Roman people had leopard things, but that was movies.
Yeah, or Byzantine and all those other.
Or like the bear was like the Gauls and the lion. Are these supposed to, like what's the symbols here representing? Like, are they representing specific nations?
Well, let's go back to Daniel. Everything goes back to Daniel, right? Daniel chapter 7.
Well, was Rome in existence at the time Daniel was written? If we're talking about Rome, then why would it go to Daniel?
Nope, it wasn't in existence. Yeah, but neither were the Byzantines. I heard that one as one of the arguments too. I mean, the Byzantines were in existence, but they didn't exist. They became called the Byzantines after Constantine.
Okay. That was a wild guess. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I was just throwing out, like, none of these are actually in existence. The symbols that they're grabbing for are not going to be in existence. They're using these symbols to refer to something new, but the same idea. Like if you go back to the Old Testament, you grab these ideas. Now, what does it mean for this new group? And that's what I'm going to ask you to do too. Right? They're going to have it.
Lion is Babylon.
Okay, you're just reading through the book of Daniel now.
Yeah, and a bear is Medo-Persian Empire.
All right.
Leopard is a picture of the Greek Empire.
Okay, good job. I'm guessing that your Bible has some sort of a graph on it, and that you didn't just read all of chapter 7 real quickly, did you?
That is correct.
Yeah. Which means what we've done is we've grabbed another system and we've put it in there, which may be 100% correct, but we've grabbed somebody's interpretation and stuck it in, right? So the question is, does it say that?
He's a rabbi, so hopefully he's got it right.
Okay, yep. And I think you're right. I think that's exactly what
I
it
don't
said.
know if he does. Let's see if he does.
Well, you'll have to
Let's say
read
you're
through. Chapter 7 is very long. I don't know that we want to take the time to do all of this, since we're trying to stick with Revelation, but I think generally this is the assumed interpretation. Are these particular countries or empires
Yeah.
that would have been in control at that time? Okay. So
Wouldn't
that is
the most prevalent one that John might be referring to would be the Roman Empire, correct?
that's right. Even though that's probably not what they're referring to. I mean, maybe Daniel is referring to that last one being Rome. That's questionable. And it makes the most sense, but it might be Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece, or it might be Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. Some of this is going to depend on how you date the book of Daniel and how you think about his ability to supernaturally prognosticate things in the future. So if you put him in the 5th century or 6th century, then a lot of this hasn't taken place yet, right? So, but if you put him in the 2nd century, like I do, all of this has taken place. So it's not being prognosticated. Here's the point though. It doesn't matter which ones specifically they represent. They represent the empire as opposed to God's people.
And it's an empire no matter time notwithstanding.
That's right. Doesn't matter.
You could rip this out and say USA.
We're going to do that at the end.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we're going to try and apply it. We're going to try and say, how does this move from Daniel's time to John's time to our time? Does this still have any application? Because remember, the text is written not to us, but it's written for us. So our first job is to figure out who it's written to and what they're dealing with, and then to find out whether this somehow the story continues into our time. All right, so if we're in the book of Revelation, back to Revelation, we've got this political power, the Roman Empire, I think to John, or any political power that claims religious sanction for its injustices. Okay, so by next week, we're going to look at what Travis said is the Antichrist, which of course he said that because 666 is at the end, not in this section. And maybe that's exactly what it is, but we don't care about the Antichrist, right? It's the beast. Okay, and this is some sort of a false prophet that is out there, although I'm going to argue probably the last beast is more of a false prophet, but they're supposed to be combined. In fact, later on in the text, we're not going to hear about two beasts. We're just going to hear about the beast. Okay, so it's a move to make a point, and then they'll bring them back together. You do this in teaching all the time, right? Make a pedagogical point, and then you say, well, it's basically the same thing. All right. So the first one is going to be political power. The second one is going to be religious power that supports political power. So you can imagine how that will work, especially in the ancient Near East. We don't have that separation of church and state and all that stuff, right? They don't live in that. That world is completely foreign to them. Okay, there is no such thing as empire outside of empire designed by the gods. Okay, so the gods guide the state. So what happens is the religious people, they start saying you should bow down to the emperor, right? There's emperor worship. And so you have these two things working in tandem, which are really just one thing, anything that's going to take you away from worship of the true God, right? Anything to take you away from worshiping the true God. That's the problem. The problem is that all of these creatures, these beasts, these chaos monsters are destroying us at every move, and yet we keep worshiping them. Man, we got so much to apply here. Okay, but we're only on verse 2.
Can I ask you a quick question about the narrative style though? So, and my call dropped for a minute, so maybe you guys hit this, but so this style of like taking this really imaginative, descriptive, strange description of a creature, right? And then suddenly it's like, okay, we're supposed to interpret that as like a person. Like, so they have this description of this dragon, but like as you read on, it's more like behaving like a person and leading these groups of people and everything. Is that done just because it's and clearly like you're saying, that's to relate it back to these other scriptures that they'd be familiar with? Is that done to make the message more covert, so that it's not as, it's a little more of a hidden message and like they don't get to avoid persecution? Or is it just because that's the way he likes to write? Do we know any idea about like is this just super common and this is just how everyone in that time, if you're like a political cartoon, like you were saying, like it's just super common? Or did this have another motive of like, okay, it's really making the message subversive and secret kind of thing?
I would say it is. So remember, Revelation or apocalyptic literature, this is what it's named after, this book. So it's not like we have tons of apocalyptic literature that's coming out like before this. It's named after this, but we do see it. Ezekiel, Daniel, these images that are out there. We see it in Thessalonians, we see it in Matthew, we see little pieces of this, and we've got others out there at the same time as this. So it is common. It is common to subvert the empire by going underground, by not saying it quite straight out. So I'm going to say everyone who is reading this text would probably know what's going on, but the nations would not.
Okay.
So if you haven't been steeped in Hebrew philosophy and theology,
you just be like,
probably
that's
not
a
gonna be able to
weird
follow
book. Right. It's not going to be offensive or like, oh, sound the alarm. We've got this cult moving around or something that we need to upend. Okay, cool.
But also keep in mind, like these books aren't being like published on a printing press and found in all of the different, like John would be giving this document out to somebody who would be reading it to maybe these 7 churches, like just going around to some locations, some individual locations. So it's not, I don't know if it's exactly empire destroying at this point.
Yeah, but even then, I mean, if it's being spoken, even more motivation to make the messaging a little less overt, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Although if you end up reading the text correctly, like even if the nations were to get a hold of this, it's not overly destructive to them. Like it's really sad. I mean, it's not like, okay, everybody get up in arms and attack Rome. It's really like, hey, you guys are going to continue to suffer until the end. And do so well and show Jesus is beautiful and the Lamb will take care of all this stuff. They'd be like, yeah, good. Keep doing that, guys. That's the plan. Right? If you need to give hope and encouragement, but it is telling them not to bow, right? And that's the thing that is somewhat controversial here. Do not bow to this army, to this empire, to emperor worship. So it's again taking us back to Daniel. That's what Daniel's about, right? I'm not going to take this food. Okay, I'm not going to compromise with the world. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We're not going to bow down to your idols, right? Even if you throw us in a fiery pit, we're still on. Like, we're not going to compromise. And that's this, like, stand strong, don't compromise, don't worship. Because it's easy to compromise. So easy. Rome has got a Pax Romana going on. Okay. And he's trying to say, hey, remember, Pax Romana, that is the Roman peace, everything being wonderful. It was brought to you by war, by destruction all around Rome. Rome is real nice because there's an army around Rome really big that destroys everybody else that gets in its path. And you've seen all those things. I know we vote for Gladiator, but I mean, come on. That's what we're talking about at this time. They're a very destructive force. And he's saying, don't buy into this. I know it's easier for you to get food. It's easier for you to be welcomed into the public square, to have friendships, all these things. He's saying, don't fall for it. That's not the way to peace. Way to pieces through dying. Holy crap, that doesn't sound good.
Hmm.
Except for they're already dying, probably.
Yeah.
And so this gives them hope in that. All right. So verse 2, we've already seen the animals, right? The leopard, all that stuff. So we see that very clear. It's Daniel 7, 1 through 14. Anti-Christian governments that are persecuting the state. Verse 3, one of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound. Okay, so this is another place where I'm not going to use that word, that anti thing going on there. This is where the false prophet, this is where the beast looks a lot like Jesus. Right? So it's another mimic. He looks a lot like him, parodying Jesus. There's a wound that happens, and the whole earth is following the beast with wonder. Okay, you remember some passages in the Gospels where he says something like the whole world has gone up after him, right? Referring to Jesus. So here we have, so think back to chapter 5 or look at chapter 5 if you want. You're going to see the picture of Jesus there, a lamb standing as if slain. And then here, one of his heads as if it's been slain. Okay. The lamb purchased men and women from every tribe, tongue, nation, and people group, right? And then here in verse 7, the beast exercises authority over all the men, women, every tribe, people, tongue, and nation. So again, we have that mimicking. And then verse 13 in chapter 5, the whole world worships the lamb. And verse 4 right here, the whole earth worships the dragon and the beast.
I mean, it's also in verse 3, not just that it has the wound. It's that it's been resurrected, because it says fatal wound, but yet it's healed. And fatal means it died.
Yeah.
So there's like a resurrection kind of thing.
Yep, that's right. So yeah, he's getting back up.
Yeah.
So-
So how can it be fatal?
But is that talking about the empire and empire? That
Right.
The fatal wound had been
Not an individual, right?
right?
We keep trying to think of it like that.
one of the heads of the beast
I was just pointing out the mimicry.
seemed is the operative word. Well, but that's in our language. Seemed to have had a fatal wound.
But that's
they were
fair.
saying-
That's what it is. It seemed to,
yeah.
right? Seemed to have had a fatal wound. And there was a legend at that time, a rumor that that the emperor of that time had not died, but had been taken to a remote island to recover from an attempted suicide, and that he would later return and regain the throne.
Okay.
And of course, other people, like he did actually die. You guys know who this emperor is? His name's Nero.
Nero. I was
Okay.
gonna say Nero. Yeah. Sounds like Nero. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like Nero, exactly. Sounds like Nero, it is. But even though he didn't come back and reclaim the throne, other people, other emperors would come in, and others would-be emperors would come in, and they would claim to be Nero
Yeah.
recreated, resurrected,
Yeah.
right? Which gives them a lot of power, right? To
Yeah.
start claiming to be what everybody was thinking was going to happen. So this is in the minds of the people too. So that idea plus one of the heads destroyed, but comes back, that, you know, one part of the empire is coming back. All that stuff is being thought of here. So I think John's got in his mind Nero's death. By the way, I think 666 at the end is referring to Nero as well. Just to go ahead and give you, actually, like you're waiting for that. That's what you're here for. You can just go ahead and go now. Nero. So you've been waiting for the whole time. Just tell us who 666 is. Oh, Nero.
Hey, Jace.
Yeah.
Hey, I probably should have asked this a couple moments ago, but you were talking about how this book is written. Hey, go ahead and suffer to the end, keep it up. You're showing that Jesus is beautiful. That to me sounds like that kind of second nuance of, I've read some about atonement, and there's like the second nuance that it feels like the evangelical world has lost, that the people of God suffer in order to call an unbelieving world to them to God, and that suffering is actually considered atonement, God's atonement through his own people. Does that sound accurate to you, what I'm articulating? I know it wasn't
Yeah,
clear.
so that's Isaiah. What you are saying right now is straight out of Isaiah, this idea that Israel will suffer for the sins of the nations
Yes, yes.
and therefore atone for their sins. So all those passages about the suffering servant, you got 4 different suffering servant songs, are talking about Israel specifically. He's the suffering.
Mhm.
So-
N.T. Wright likes to carry that on then to the church as well, to say that the church is fulfilling that function now here on earth as well.
Absolutely. Like that is the storyline of the Bible, right? There's this, Israel is supposed to pull in the nations. That's kind of the idea, draw all men to themselves. They're going to do it through their suffering. People are going to see them as they continue to celebrate God. That's Isaiah. It's all throughout Isaiah. And then Jesus will be the picture. He'll be the what we call the antitype, right? So the type or the tupos, where the picture is Isaiah of Israel, and then the reality is Jesus is the suffering servant, because he's going to do, right, Isaiah 53, by his stripes they are healed, all that stuff, which was about Israel / Isaiah, is also pointing to this Jesus character. And then as we just shift all that, right, the Holy Spirit, or Jesus, breathes on him, gives his spirit to the disciples, to the apostles, who then go into all the world and create the church of God, the people of God from there on. And now they are supposed to be the picture of what Jesus is. They're the arms and legs of Christ in the world. So they're supposed to do the exact same thing. That's the story.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And if you're not catching that, thank you, Randall, because to me that's just like that should be the story. But I realize that most people don't always see that, and I need to go big picture a lot. Like, that's exactly what I said.
I think that's something that's really huge in my line of work, if you want to be practical, is with people who are dying and often wonder, why in the world does God even let me exist still at this point? And I have to remind them constantly that their suffering and remaining faithful to God speaks loads of testimony to the world that they would still claim that Jesus is a loving God, even though they've got ALS or they've got, stage 4 cancer or whatever at the age of 44. So, yeah.
So easy for us to just quote the story. So hard for us to be able to survive something like that. But praise God for chaplains like Rachel, who are sitting there reminding them that their suffering produces hope, produces endurance, and produces hope. Romans, right? That change. And not only hope in themselves, but hope in the rest of the world. Very good. Thanks, Randall. All right. So, yeah. All right. So people are worshiping the dragon. They're worshiping this anti-creature thing. They're defying Jesus, and they speak of the beast as if he's God. Remember who is like him among the gods, right? Now it's this is the creature that is like them among the gods. And the beast was given, this is verse 5, given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words. It was allowed to exercise authority for that 3.5 years, 1,290 days, right? 42 months, which is the complete amount of time of the suffering of the people of God in the ancient understanding in their world they would have thought about. It opened its mouth to utter the blasphemies against God, blaspheme his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. That's one of the main things that the false prophet will do, is blaspheme God. Sets himself up as God in Daniel 7, but only for a limited amount of time. He's not only allowed to exercise authority for a little bit. Just like Nebuchadnezzar is mentioned in Daniel 4, wherever the Nebuchadnezzar story is. There's something there about the Most High is ruler over the realm of humankind and bestows it on whoever he wishes. That line, like he's giving authority to Nebuchadnezzar for a time. He's giving authority to this beast, which is just Nebuchadnezzar, right? Just a new incarnation of Nebuchadnezzar. Not literally a new incarnation, right? But a new world of evil It was setting itself up against God. So it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. The authority was given to every tribe and people and tongue and nation over all of them. And all who dwell on earth will worship it. Everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb that was slain. So even in its defeating the saints, it's been given permission to do that. But the whole world's worshiping him. Like he's given quite a lot of authority, except those who are elect, except those who are written in the book. Okay, they're the exception.
So in this case, when it says it was given power, are we meant to interpret that as being given power by the dragon, or is this? It seemed like when you were talking about the Daniel passages that they were given power by God in a limited way. Is it? Do you know where the power is supposed to come from?
It says
Is
the
it like
dragon.
authorized?
The dragon gave it his power and his throne and his authority.
Yeah,
That
that's
was
verse
earlier,
2.
right? Or is it here?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think
Okay.
Fran's right, even though I said it, I was just making an assumption in my head that it was based on Nebuchadnezzar. But I
Mhm.
think both of you are right in drawing attention to it's the dragon that gives him the power. Although I think it's fair to say that God is the one that allows this to happen.
Mhm.
And that's
Right.
the point, the larger point of all of this in the 42 months part, right? Like there's a limitation, there's a boundary put on them. The dragon doesn't like that boundary. So I think it's fair to say God is giving them boundaries, but I do think the power is being given by the dragon from verse 2. So good point. That kept me straight there. Good job.
Are we meant to understand why that would be, or is that more of a question like what Randall was talking about? Like why are we supposed to wonder why this authority to deceive and to cause this movement against God, I suppose, to happen? Is that supposed to be clear, or is that kind of left to your own interpretation? You know what I mean? Like why is it allowed to happen? Why is the beast allowed to defy God like this?
So I would probably say it like I don't think that question. I think this is what's already happening. So they're writing what's been happening for thousands of years. Like the empire is a blasphemous place.
Okay.
It is a place that once you gain power, you use it in corrupt ways. Like this is the story of every generation of power, right? And we're going to ask ourselves if it's us, the United States, and if it's us, the church, in just a second. Right? So I think the answer is yes to both of those things, right? We are the empire, the U.S. We are the empire, sometimes the church, right? And we see it very clearly in many cases, and it's disgusting.
So I mean, this is saying everyone will worship it except for those whose names are in the book of life, which is usually interpreted as like faithful followers, right?
But he's writing to the faithful followers, right? And saying, don't fall for this.
Right. And so you say empire, like wouldn't another word that would maybe fit even better is like, don't choose power. That's why we love empires, is because they're perceived to have this power. And that's why people worship them, is for power. And don't choose power, choose sacrifice.
Yep. Yeah. Although I think we're trying to stay specific. I think he's talking about Rome.
Yeah.
So for him, it's the empire. But I do think that's the bigger picture that what you're drawing attention to. This is power over structure. And Jesus is going to say, power comes under.
So in using the words like, even if they're describing a thing that's already happening, saying that it's being given power, and you're kind of implying that, but ultimately God is allowing certain it's under God's direction, right? And that's kind of an
No.
important through line that like it's still under God's control, so don't worry. Or
God allows free will. God, it doesn't control it. He allows free will.
But that's different than saying it's under his control. I think I don't think David was saying he's controlling the evil.
right.
Like he's making it happen. I think he's saying he's letting this happen for a time. There is a time where he will no longer allow this to happen, where he will fix things, and all the free will you have in the world, he will crush it. Right? At least that's the impression Revelation gives us.
And if this is describing something that's currently happening, you have a little bit of that safety net kind of feel that like, yes, this is happening around you, but also remember that this is all, it's all part of the plan, right?
That's exactly
okay.
right.
Okay.
Chase,
And
could I ask? I just read this book in my book club that is so apropos to what we're discussing now. The name of it is King Leopold's Ghost. Has anybody ever read this? King Leopold's Ghost. King Leopold was the one who colonized the Congo. And speaking of empire and political power and how, how charismatic he was as the king of Belgium, taking over this huge place, and what he did to the peoples there and the evil that was done. I just couldn't get over that. I had known about some of this, that all my life, I had not heard this description of colonizing the Congo, and how he drew in nations, including the US of A and England and, European nations in his effort to do this. And he started out with saying, we're going to send these Christian missionaries there, and they're going to, do good things with the people and all of that. And then he ended up with it in his individual ownership, not his country's, Belgium, but his. And he wanted money and an empire. Those were his motives. And he was so charismatic in doing it. He told so many lies to everybody, and they believed him. And how he carried out saying he was doing away with the slave labor that was going on there. But then he installed this other slave labor, which was horrible. For example, when they had to go out into the woods to climb the trees to get the rubber, to make them come back with the rubber, he kidnapped the wives and children and kept them bound. And if you didn't bring your quota, he cut off the kids' hands, stuff like that. I mean, and this was only in 1960 did Congo get their right to be a nation, their own nation, 1960. And then there's more going on after that. But I never heard of it. But this, this is a true example of an evil empire. Oh.
Jace, if I can cite one more 1 John passage from 5:19.
Yeah.
Where he says, we know we are children of God, and that the whole world is under the control of the evil one.
Oh.
Yep. So the dragon is the one, what Brad's saying, dragon is the one controlling all of this, but it's still, right? All this has happened under the watch, under the care of God. That doesn't mean he wants it to happen. He's working, I would say, to fix that. That's what the book of Revelation is about. Okay, we can get into all kinds of philosophical conversations about how God allows for any kind of evil when he has the power not to do it. Does the Bible say that God is omnipotent? There's all kinds of philosophy stuff in that, but let's just keep it at the simple spot of, like, especially for the book of Revelation, it's okay, everyone who's being tortured, God's got this, right? That's kind of the idea. Like he's going to make this all right. Keep fighting for this alternative way of living, not for this empire. So I don't think most empires start off, with plans to destroy. I mean, some do, I'm sure, but it's usually just the more power you get, right? The more you get lost in this world of greed and corruption and power. You want more power. Power just brings more power. The Bible Project's got a great one on justice, if you've never seen that, about the levels that go up and down and stuff like that. 30 minutes? No, I got 14 minutes. Yeah, okay, thanks. I see it. 14 minutes, got it. All right, so let's go ahead and get to, I'm sure I'm missing some important things in here, but well, let's just do 9 and 10 just to bring it to close. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity goes. If anyone slays with the sword must be slain by. Here's a call for the endurance and faithfulness on the part of the saints, which is what we've been saying the whole time, right? Listen, be faithful, endure even to the point of death. So none of those emperors that that John is dealing with, right? Julius Caesar, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, Nero, Domitian, any of those, they all started probably with great intentions. I don't know for real, actually. They may have been very evil people, but it starts that way usually. And then you start getting to that point where you're like, you know what? I really should be worshipped. I really am pretty great. And then, I am in the realm of the gods. So the state becomes the superpower. So in what ways, this is kind of the closing question maybe, in what ways are we allowing the state to become the beast? And then if we have time, I want to ask, in what ways is the church becoming like the beast? Or has it become in the past? So what do you think? Let's talk about empires in the world right now, political regimes, which is what this is talking about. Rome. Who's the new Rome?
US of A.
China,
Yeah.
Europe,
No, China's
they're
not.
everywhere.
Russia.
Right. I don't want this to be a USA bashing time. That is not what I'm interested
It's
in.
not.
Right? I'm
It's
happy
the
to
only,
wait.
it's the only empire. It's the only
Well,
empire on the planet.
it's either under the U.S. empire banner or the Chinese empire banner, or maybe the Russian banner a little
They're
bit.
not
But they're
an empire. Neither is Russia.
they have a lot of control over Asian countries and others, and as well as South America. They're not quite as powerful, but they're an empire. So
It's the US dollar that makes the US a empire.
Oh, so economy is coming later. So we're definitely going to talk about that. That's going to hit super big because the prostitute is coming in just a few chapters, and she is the symbol of the dollar.
And that's
she's going to do.
What
every-
about military power?
Yeah. What about military?
Vast military.
I mean, isn't that the picture of power? Like Travis was saying, it's power. Like, I'm pretty sure that we have the largest military. China might have a larger military. I don't have any idea.
they have a bigger army.
Yeah, that's
Have more
really
ships
good
now.
that she said that, because like in verse 4 it says, who is like the beast, who can wage war against it? And that's why, I mean, that implies that's why they were worshiping it. And they also worship the beast and ask, who is like the beast, who can wage war against it?
Yeah. And you can imagine there's quite a lot of countries in the world who think the United States fits that perfectly. We can't, we can't fight against them. Well, and so they try, they take little pot shots, but we've got a military that keeps them in check. So how do we let that happen? In our, let's first say it's not just the United States, it's every power structure, every political power structure that subjects its people in some way, right? That tells them that power is the most important thing. So there's all kinds of them. But for us here, single out ours, because that's where we live. Okay, this is not necessarily being derogatory just towards the United States, but it applies for us. How do we allow that to happen? Or how
We
does
give,
it?
we give it to it. We give our allegiance, our sovereignty to it. We approve it.
I don't know if you
Keep
were-
voting it into office.
Yeah.
By putting certain people into office? Is that what you said?
We support
I don't
it.
know if I don't know if you were intentionally foreshadowing it earlier, but you talked about the people, John saying, I know it's tempting to live in this empire because it protects you and makes things a whole lot easier. But don't fall for it. It certainly is pretty easy to live in the United States compared to anywhere else in the world. I mean, even the most you can be, in an impoverished state in the United States and still have quite a bit more
Yep.
than people in any other nation and other nations. So
Yep.
I don't want to cause anything to disrupt that, right?
right.
Because I am rich and I am well fed and taken care of, and I don't want to mess that up.
And we talk about that a lot of times in our Justice for Jesus Sunday school class of like there's the aspect of that in racial injustice too, right? That like it's really easy to be, I mean, I will make this claim for myself. I believe that it's easy to fall into this it's to be white in America compared to being black and being of people of color in the nation, and like and we get to just like when we look into that sometimes, we'll try to kind of put ourselves in those positions and learn about it, but you can just like I retreat to my middle class, upper middle class white home out in the suburbs, right? And for the whole week, and like I can just give myself, I don't have to live in that. I can choose whether or not I'm going to be proximate with people in the world who are suffering, or whether I'm just going to retreat to my haven that like, I don't have to even think about it.
Yeah. So that's the whole idea of systemic injustice that we don't fight against. We're just propping up the system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a great analogy there, and I think it applies not just to racial injustice, but to all of this. Is that like there's this analogy of racism being like on a treadmill. So like even when you're standing still, even when you're not actively doing things in a racist way, the system that we live in is such that you're always moving forward in it. It just carried by this treadmill, and you have to actively walk in the opposite direction in order to actually make any progress in the opposite way. So, and I think that rings true for a lot of this too. It's just like the power structures in the world, you have to actively work against, or they will just sweep you away without you even doing anything.
But we get the message that it needs to be individual salvation that changes people. We aren't supposed to work against systems.
Oh, Lord.
Right.
I
So
think we
there-
are supposed to do both.
I think that's her point. Yeah. So that's the question then. So the second question is going to go right at what Lori was saying is, how are we propping this up? How are we helping the empire as the church, people of God who are not supposed to be doing it? How are we just standing still or not working hard enough? Are we promoting a just get saved and then everything will be good, individual salvation? Or is it time for us to do something totally different?
I mean, a lot of churches are doing that because it sells and gets money in the building. So,
Yep.
But they're not all doing that.
No, yeah, there's a lot of churches joining together with other churches, trying to fight against things.
But I think Lori nailed it. Like there's this whole like you don't talk politics in church stuff. So I mean, again, this is my own learnings, and I'm not saying this is definitely true or anything, but like a lot of that we don't talk politics in church. I've learned originated in the South, in areas where like they didn't want anyone upsetting the status quo, right? Because it's not anti-Christian to be involved in politics. Is like is people, right? It's your community working together in your community, and working together to make things better. And when we say politics isn't allowed in church, you're saying you're now taking that power of the church away to move the community forward. And a lot of that, I believe, was intentional in, Jim Crow era. So, and probably today too. Well, I would say today too, because I've heard that many times in my own church situations, that like, well, we don't want to get into that. That's political. You don't want to be on the school board. That's political.
Yeah.
I come at this a little bit differently too myself, because I think that our systematic theology is inherently slanted against Jews, actually. I think we continue as a church to paint the Jewish faith in a light that is inaccurate to how its own followers perceive itself to be. And so in so doing, we create straw men out of them and continue to alienate Jewish people from ourselves. And there's no dialogue going on between the church and Jewish people. And I think that's been something that's been rampant through the church since about 400 CE. Painting of Pharisees as if they feel like the law is something that has to be kept perfectly in order to be saved. If you talk to anybody now in Jewish circles, if you read any of the Pharisaic writings at this point, you can see that they did not believe that keeping the law was the way to be saved. They saw that salvation had come prior to the law being given on Sinai. They cite the Exodus crossing, and it says right in the text, you'll see the salvation of the Lord there.
Okay, Randall, how connect this for me? Let's not not teach everybody the new perspective right now.
Yeah, sorry. Well, that's not new perspective. That's within Judaism.
That's what the new perspective is.
No, new perspective is not within Judaism. Mark Nanos would have quite a fit.
Sanders. Randall, Sanders is all about what Judaism looks like. That's the new perspective.
Mark Nanos has a beef with Sanders. He can't stand Sanders.
That's fine. My point is that's not the point right now. Stick with where we are. You and me can have that conversation.
Okay.
Oh, I wanted to hear where you were going to make the connection though, because I think you're right. This is just another
Yes,
group that
you are right.
we have
You
put
are right,
aside
Randall.
100%.
Yeah.
I just didn't want you to go into all the little details.
The church continues to preach the gospel as if you have to be, that all these Pharisees were trying to keep legalistic rules instead of portraying Pharisees honestly and authentically. They are trying to maintain a Lutheran and Calvinistic portrayal of salvation and a Lutheran and Calvinistic portrayal of the Jewish people and the Pharisees being legalists in order to keep their gospel presentation in place and thereby create a system of racism in and of itself against Jews. Now, I don't know if I would call it racism or what I would call it, but nobody would like to be painted with an articulation of their own faith that is inaccurate.
Fair enough. So we can say that not only about the Jews, we can say that about the Muslims, Hindus, whatever. When we Christians like to give our definition of what it looks like in 5 easy steps, this is what Muslims are, and they're like, no, it's not. Yeah.
Right. And that's where I'm saying it's still, but in particular towards Jews, it is still hard baked into our gospel presentations. Portray the Pharisees as legalistic lawmongers, make them out to be that you aren't saved by grace, and that's what the cross is all about.
Yeah. Okay. All right. 9:15. Worthy conversation to pick up next week. Do we want to talk more about power? Actually, I guess we can just bring in the next section. It'll come up automatically anyway. So if we're going to talk about religious power, this will be the main question. So we'll be able to have this discussion further. So if you guys all buy McKnight's new book on Revelation, skip to the appendix, read that chapter on political and religious power, and you will be blown away. So you don't have to do that, but it's a brand new book. It's good. All right, 9:16. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I'm sure that Randall and I are about to have a big argument about what. Wait, did he leave? Oh, he ditched. Oh, I guess
I
not.
hope not. I was here for it.
Darn.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
come on, Randall. What are you doing, man?
I just need time to make my popcorn.
I think we're just speaking past each other.
Yeah.
Because he knows the new perspective. He and I have had multiple conversations on it. So I think we're just missing each other.
Yeah.
Now he's gone. Hopefully he won't be too offended by me. All right. See you guys.
All
Thanks
right.
for coming.
Y'all have a blessed day.
Thanks, Jade.
Thank you.